So imagine that only one perspective of why Yahusha came to the earth to die was, according, you might say, Christian doctrine. According to John 3:16, says in King James, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." Okay, there's the reason for the crucifixion. But according to Roman legal records, the reason why he had to die is because he was causing some sort of civil unrest. And according to the Jews, the reason he had to die was because they were finally able to pin the tail on the donkey, or pin the accusation that he used the sacred name. See, he used the sacred name, so now we get to kill him. That's what I've heard somebody say about Caiaphas, saying, hey, he said the words "I am," and he ripped his garment. And it's like, wait a minute, which word "I am" did he use? Did he use ehe? Did he use ani? Or did he use anoki? Because it wouldn't have necessarily fit the context of the sentence to use Yod He Vav He, which is the sacred name that you're not supposed to utter. So that doesn't even fit. So according to whose understanding did he have to die? But I was suggesting in a previous video that we had made, I think it was maybe on Mountain Air 7, that if I take as a premise that all we know is what Elohim told us, that's all we know. Everything else is man-made doctrines of invention, of hypothetical guesswork. Why does universe exist? Let's see. Well, let's invent something about Martians and intergalactic travel and billions of years and multiverses instead of a universe and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's all just science fiction. What did YHUH tell us? Can you read the Bible? Yeah, but how do we know the Jews didn't make it up? Or the Caesar's Messiah? Oh gosh, that's a whole other thing. But what I'm saying is, we don't know nothing. Oh, wait a minute. What if we look at the alphabet? Now, for me to take as a basic premise, our Elohim, who calls himself YHUH Zavot, invented the 22 letters of the alphabet. He concocted them. He designed them. He scripted them as a communication. Okay? And that's what he gave us, these 22 letters in sequence order. Okay, if I take that as a basis, somebody else could say, I don't believe it. And it's like, okay, then go make up your own stuff. I'm going to run with this and try to see what's in there. And if you don't like it, go find your own stuff. There's plenty of artifacts. There's some that they even claim were from outer space. Go try to analyze those if you want. I don't care. I just don't have time for it. But I'm going to look at these 22 letters and say, what does it tell me? So if I can read He Vav Zion and realize that it means, behold, this man put to the weapon. It's like, those are the exact words Pilate said. So I'm going to plug that event of Yeshua being whipped and put the robe and the crown of thorns on his head and the scepter in his hand, and Pilate mocking him. Hey, that fits that series of reading it as if it was a message. The series of those three letters, He Vav Zion. Who's it referring to? Well, the letter that came right before it, the Dalet. Yeshua claimed to be the Dalet. Oh, that identifies the one. Well, what became before that? Gimel came before Dalet and Bet. But if I look at Bet, Gimel, Dalet, it means in disguise. Well, in disguise as what? As He Vav, as you might say, being birthed from a woman. Dalet, He Vav, as a man. Well, there's Yeshua. Okay, that's good enough for me to read that as a script. And then Het. Well, there's a tomb. Well, Het's a fence. Well, so's a tomb, a crypt, the grave. Oh, why did that happen to be in the Roman era in the Middle East that they rolled round stones in front of the tombs? It just happened to be, and just happened to be the letter Tet. What do you know? And then to put a pin in it, a piece of iron, from what I understood, they're like an inch in diameter and a foot long, and they just pounded it through a whole board through the rock, and you're not going to move that thing. It's like a seal. It wasn't just a little piece of wax they had on the rock, and the stone rolled away, shearing that off. But that pin acted as a yod. So Het Tet Yod, look at Yeshua being put into the grave. Okay. Well, now, if that's Yeshua being put into the grave, and I can look at Pei Zadi, and here's the mouth of the grave or mouth of something opening and boom, bursting forth. Well, there's the resurrection. Then I could sit there and say, wait a minute, what happened between Yod and Pei? Well, you got Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samik Ayin, and then Pei, and then Zadi. Okay, so somehow I could choose to believe that in the narrative of the letters of the alphabet, as Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samik Ayin, Pei, is Yeshua in the tomb. And he was put into the tomb 3 days and 3 nights. And so guess what? Part of the narrative of the Mishkan pattern code is that it can be broken into groups of 3. Kaf Lamed, there's 1. Mem Nun, there's 2. Samik Ayin Pei, there's 3. Hey, but it doesn't line up. But two of these, and 3 of those, that's a secret code. Don't worry about it. It's a secret code. You don't understand it? Must be still a secret. The point is, if I can say there's a story in those letters, the 2, the 3, that's 7 letters. Why? What happened? How can I read these 7 letters for what happened while Yeshua was in the grave? I don't know. Let's just invent a doctrine. Let's just say he goes down to hell, kicks the devil in the butt, steals his pitchfork. Oh, turn around, goes back, grabs the keys also. Thanks, Peter, for reminding me. And then runs up and woohoo, look at, I've got the devil's pitchfork and the keys of hell and death. They're mine. Really? How did he lose them? How'd the devil get them? Oh, Adam gave them to him. Really? Did Adam give the devil the keys of hell? Come on, who comes up with this stuff? I don't have to come up with anything. I have 7 letters. Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samik Ayin Pei. Now, if I could say that's what Yahweh said, how do I read those to tell me what was Yeshua doing in the grave? Did he have to die for our sins? He already had given Israel the day of the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So I could say, well, he didn't have to die because he already gave us the day of Yom Kippur to forgive us of our sins. But Paul said, oh, it was only the blood of goats and bulls, and he did. Whoa, wait a minute. Paul, what do you mean only? The word Kippur means atoned for, washed away, forgiven, gone, done, forgotten. Doesn't say, yeah, but only a little bit. It means forgiven and forgotten. So when Paul says, well, it didn't really count, then shut up, Paul. Who wrote Paul? Is it an accurate translation? I don't know. I'm not going to argue that. But if I can read that he came down and decided if he was the creator of human life and the creator of the universe and said, now guess what? I'm going to put myself into the format of a human being and even experience death as a human being. You don't have to do that. It's not about I thinking he has to do that. He chose to do that as part of the experience in order to accomplish something. And in order to accomplish what? Now, there's a good question. And it can be found in Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samik Ayin Pei. Yeah, but nobody knows what that means. Well, fine. Then that becomes the great mystery. What does it mean? But for somebody to say, hey, you're pushing a doctrine that other people have had for thousands of years. No, I'm not. I don't know anybody on the planet who's ever had this conversation. So for somebody to say I'm pushing a replacement theology, you have to define what the heck do they mean by replacement theology? What does anybody mean by replacement theology? But what am I even talking about? Because there's no replacement of anything other than the concept that a sacrificial offering is a replacement for a human's predicament. And where do I come up with that? Is that pushing Christianity? No, wait a minute. The thing that triggered my thinking one time, a couple of years ago, I saw an illustration of a high priest standing next to a stone pile of rocks altar with an animal on it that he lit the thing on fire, and he's got his hands up. And all of a sudden I realized, okay, this is not our culture. This is a whole different picture in my mind's eye. But now I'm looking at this illustration, and all of a sudden I realized there's an exchange happening. According to what Elohim gave us in the scripture, When you have committed an offense, an error, a crime, a sin, unintentional, and it's brought to your attention that you're now guilty, you're condemned as one who is the offender. If you take an innocent, clean, pure, unblemished animal of a certain description that Yahweh gave a provision for, lamb or a goat typically, and if you kill that one and burn it, somehow its essence becomes yours and your essence becomes its. Now, somebody else can say, I don't understand it, I don't get it, or I deny it. Doesn't work that way. It's like, shut up, you're not the guy that made the rules. Yahweh Zavot made the rules, and that's what he said. And that's the provision he gave to Israel. If you're filthy and you take this perfectly pure, clean animal and you sacrifice it according to his protocol, then in the spirit, you could say, there's an exchange made. Okay, now if that's true, what happens if you put on a blemished animal? Like, I'm not going to give up my perfectly good lamb. I'm going to take the bummer lamb with a broken leg and a blind eye that nobody wants to anyway, and I'll sacrifice it. Well, a very interesting movie was made a number of years ago called The Fly. And in that movie, science fiction, somebody developed this machine where you step inside the booth and it can teleport you, kind of like with Star Trek. You let's say you demolecularize, turn into some sort of plasma, projected to some other location, and then reconfigure as a human. And then to come back, you come back and it reconfigures you as a human. Well, a fly had gotten in to the cubicle. And when the person was a human, he sat down to eat dinner, and all of a sudden he kind of spits up and all this juice comes out of his mouth onto his food, and what the heck, and he starts sprouting these weird looking hairs. Well, he had been reconfigured with his humanity, blended with the fly. So, oh gee, nobody thought of that. How do you keep the bugs and the flies and the bacteria out of this little booth that you step into? It was a great movie. The interesting thing about that is, what the heck do you think would happen to you if you had a blemished animal? And there was a truth to this that Elohim created when he created the universe, that there was some sort of reciprocating exchange. My cleanliness for its. Well, I'm filthy and it's clean, but if we exchange, it now takes on my filthiness and I take on its cleanliness. That's the exact meaning of the word spelled het, tet, yod. Imagine that. The three letters in the sequence order of the alphabet, het, tet, yod, means my sin. I have incurred guilt, and my sin sacrifice incurs my guilt for me so that I can be cleansed and find favor. But if my sin sacrifice is polluted like a fly, guess what? I'm now taking on its attributes. And if that's the way Elohim designed the universe, then the real great exchange can only be accommodated by this pure human. Of course, we don't even know what humanity is. But it's not just that, oh, Day of the Atonement wasn't good enough and the blood of bulls and goats, blah, blah, whatever Paul said. It's like, no, this is looking into a deeper mystery by simply looking at the letters of the alphabet. And if Elohim built into the whole universe this concept of this great exchange, as it were, blood for blood, ruach for ruach, and he decided to come down and be that exchange somehow, that's his business. And I've never heard this even talked about, really, with any Christian doctrine that I know, and certainly not correlated to the Hebrew alphabet. Nor have I heard any Jews ever talking about this. So this is novel territory, pioneering work, that if somebody else says, hey, I can't wrap my mind around that, it's like, I'll explain it better if I can, and if it gets too much for you that you don't want to deal with it, then don't deal with it. It's okay. You don't have to deal with it. Believe whatever you want to believe. And I'm going to keep pursuing this, because if het tet yod is this great exchange, and then I can see kaf lamed. Well, yod kaf lamed means literally spelling the word, natural letter order. He will have the power and capacity to prevail and contain it all. Kaf lamed means all, every, each, any. How much can he contain? All, any, each. But kaf lamed mem without the yod means put to shame and humiliated. Yeah, he was put to shame and humiliated. And then when you get down to the letter mem, that's kind of like this descending depth of concept. When you get down to mem, and there's a picture of a caterpillar going into a chrysalis and becoming a slurry. Well, mem is water or aqueous, like a slurry of a caterpillar. And then noon is like this jumping. So it concepts, it turns around at mem. It's like descending to mem, and it's not the middle of the alphabet. The middle of the alphabet is 22 letters, so it's between kaf and lamed. Well, here's the letter mem. It's close to the middle, but not the middle. But at mem, if it turns around and then noon jumps and somic sprouts, and somic ayin is to put out a wing, and ayin pei is the word for oof, which is bird, and then pei zadi, which is explode, detonate, and kuf is going up like a balloon. It's like, this is all ascending stuff to the resh status, which is this majestic, exalted, look, even the shape of the letter, kuf and resh, and then sheen, the shining, and it's like, it's obvious, looking at the letters, that there's this descending like the plumb line from Aleph, from El Elyon, as the Anoki, as the Dalet, down into the depths of death, mem, into a void. Well, mem isn't void, mem is water, but there's a void of substance, a void of being. There's something about the tohu vebohu, and there's something about this other, I think we talked about it last week, or maybe it's this week that we were talking about in Isaiah 28, where it talks about, yeah, I think it was last week, even if I looked up into the heavens and see you on display, you're there. I can analyze the stars. But if I looked into this depth of void, based on human intellect and reason and logic, you're still there. Why? Because he built human reason and logic. And even though there's a depth of nothingness, and that's another way for reading the word Sheol, Shin Aleph Vav Lamed, because Shin Aleph Lamed is to interrogate or question. It's like, what? To ask why or where or whence. It's a questioning. The question mark is basically like the Shin Aleph Lamed. So I could sit there and say, if he decided to not just abide in the heavenlies or give himself a foot. Interesting, if Elohim is a spirit, a non-material spirit, essence.
Eric, can you tilt your camera up a little bit?
Yeah, if he's a non-material, I know my picture's not on the screen, so I can't see what it even looks like. What I see on the screen is that I'm sitting in this bleachers of stone.
Yeah, Sally did that. Can you go to the top of your screen? Are you on a computer or a phone?
Yeah.
Okay, go to the top of your screen. You see that little silhouette of a man with a plus next to his head?
Yeah, do I get that one?
Okay, right next to that, there's an arrow down.
An arrow down? No, that says +6. It says together mode. I don't see any arrow.
Okay, so right next to together mode, there's an arrow.
Oh.
Click on that. And you want to go to large grid.
Grid view, large grid. There you go. Okay. Anyway, thank you. What I was talking about was, so he isn't content with just abiding in the heavenlies to materialize. That, you could say, to exist in the heavenlies as some ethereal spirit, some nebulous phantom without a body. That's kind of pictured by Aleph. But to materialize into object, cosmos, matter, corporeal, that's Bet. But the letter Gimel, I'm just reading the alphabetic sequence again. So Gimel is to mobilize, verb. Bet is noun, Gimel is verb. Well, Gimel is drawn in Paleo like a head and a neck, but some people turn that upside down and say, no, that's a leg with a foot. And the modern gimel is shaped like this, the head and the neck, but then it's got this little, you know, with a foot sticking out. It's the letter with a foot.
It'll be on the screen.
Say that the one from the Aleph realm without a body, somehow at his own discretion, his own big idea, Aleph, gave himself the noun of a foot so that he could go gimmeling on the Dalet. Dalet, how is Dalet Earth? Dalet is the number 4, and there's this conceptual correlation. When we speak of the earth, north, south, east, west, there's 4. Earth, air, fire, water. Well, there's 4. Solid, liquid, gas, plasma. That's another way of saying the same thing. 4 seasons. Okay, so 4ness, and I could go on and on, think of things for it. And somebody can say, hey, you can't prove that. You're right, I can't prove anything. It's just a conceptual thematic correlation. And if it's not good enough for you, hey, there's some cats playing in a sandbox out there. That looks like fun. Why don't you go play in the sandbox with the cats? See you later. We're sitting here talking about this stuff. It's okay.
So I guess the point is that you have never ever once, and I wouldn't even be doing these videos with you if you did talk about replacement theology. It's not your thing. It's not what you're about. It's not what this is about. Not even kind of.
Not even. The high priest wasn't ever supposed to rip his garment, so he denied himself the status of high priest. It's kind of like the president getting impeached, or Nixon when he got impeached. He says, hey, listen, I voluntarily resign. I'm not even going to go through all this. I've lost my base in Congress. Nobody believes anything I'm saying, so I'm out of here. Regardless of whether he's guilty or not, that's what he said. So Caiaphas kind of did the same thing, and it's like, why would you take yourself out of commission by saying I'm the prosecuting attorney, but now that I've got the goods on this guy, look, he said the sacred name, now I'm going to take myself out of the game by ripping my own garment. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Listen, I don't have to make sense out of everybody else's need to have sense made. All I have to do is sit there and say, what do these letters mean? What I'm trying to do by showing you this thing of starting from the Aleph and reading the alphabet sequence in such a way is to say, and there was a friend who said, okay, I hear what you're saying about, Yeshua being the one who gave himself a foot so he could come walk the earth and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden one day she said, hey, wait a minute. Gimel means to be arrogant and lofty and proud and lifted up. That's not a foot. That's arrogant pride. The head of a camel, like a giraffe standing up. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Well, yeah, Gimel's the picture of a head of a camel or a giraffe or the head of anything. Could be the head of a slug crawling on the ground or a snail. It doesn't matter. It's a picture of a head and a neck, which is actually a connector. Like, right, the mouth connects to the stomach through the throat. So if Gimel's a picture of a throat, it's a connector. What does a camel do? It connects this city to that city, the manufacturer to the retailer. The retailer connects the manufacturer to the consumer. Okay, it's a Gimel. It's a nail. Well, nail is a connector, but so is Gimel a connector. It's just ideas. But if I can say, okay, I'm just telling you, I'm trying to show you these things to show you where some of these thoughts come from. Sure, we could do that, but let me just say this last thing. I remember hearing a verse out of the Bible that says, the Lord sits on a throne, heaven is his throne room, and the earth is his footstool. The earth is his footstool. Wait a minute. I drew a picture of hands with the world kind of a transparent, translucent. How do you put your feet? Especially if you're a spirit without feet. How can the earth be your footstool? And so once I started looking at Hebrew and got a dictionary, I thought, oh, I'm going to look up that word for footstool. We might call it an ottoman. Ottoman, kind of like that empire that used to be in Turkey years ago. What's an ottoman? It's a footstool. What's a footstool? The earth is his footstool. And I looked it up in the dictionary, and guess what? I think it might have even been Strong's Concordance. And guess what it said? The place you put your feet. He's a spirit. He doesn't have feet. Ah, that's right. So Bet Gimel means I'm going to give myself a foot and I'm going to have a place to put my foot. So here's this spirit who says, I want to go walking. Where am I going to walk? Well, I'm going to make a place. That's the earth. That's the Dalit, the garden. How can I walk? I don't have any feet. I know. I'm going to invent some feet for me to put on. Like we put on shoes, he put on feet. And he comes walking on the earth. Well, that was his big idea. And for somebody to say, hey, he can't do that or he wouldn't do that. And it's like, well, maybe if you were him, you wouldn't. But apparently he did. You don't like it? Okay, go play in the cat sandbox then. It's like, I'm just reading the words and looking at the letters. And for why I'm saying this is that if he wanted to experience walking the earth as a human with a foot, and then also decided for some big idea, for some reason, to experience the full scope of the human experience, which is death, real death, completely dead, not near death, but totally dead, then that's what he did. Why? Just because you don't know, and just because you don't get it, or just because you don't agree with any other theological doctrinal basis, doesn't mean he didn't. And if I can read it in the alphabet that he did, that doesn't make me party with any other miscellaneous random interpretation of what somebody else came up with. I'm just trying to read the letter sequence. Okay, go ahead, Kurt. You want to open up with a word of prayer? Let's get into that.
Thank you, Father, for Eric, everybody on this call. Everybody's going to watch these videos. If they would receive what's being said, I think it's for them, Father. It may not be for everybody. And for those of us who are wanting to know your words in your language, one letter at a time, Father, just bless this to us and let us know what you have to say. Thank you again for Eric. And thank you again for this channel. And thank you to my brothers and sisters, Israel. In the YHUH name I pray. Amen.
The effort to say, what do these words mean? As I said last week, it's a secret mystery that Yahuwah seems to have kept from the greatest minds, the greatest wise men, the greatest sages and scholars, professors and theologians, popes and cardinals and bishops, rabbis, clerics, imams. Go check any one of them if you want. I've never heard of any one of them talking about this stuff. So who do you compare this to? I think it was Caleb and Rob up in Seattle. They have a show on the radio, on the internet. They said one time, where do you get your credibility for this? That's where I did the butcher video. It's like, I don't claim credibility. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just pointing out what these letters, what the shapes are, what they say, what they speak of themselves, their own voice, and how to read the words in Hebrew based on the dictionary of the words in the natural alphabetic order sequence, which is to say, what does Aleph Bet mean? What does Bet Gimel Dalet mean? What does Dalet Hey Vav mean? What does Hey Vav Zion mean? How about Het Tet Yod? What does that mean? How about Yod Kaf Lamed? How about Kaf Lamed Mem? What does that mean? And you go through the whole alphabet. We did that. I did that one chart called Organic Devarim, how to read what the letters say in the natural alphabetic sequence order. So if anybody wants to put a label on this, I mean, I've heard of some people that were on board with this and thought it interesting, and they had their own personal perspective, and they would write poem and different things. They were actually it was flourishing within them. All of a sudden, this one lady in South Africa, one day she says, that's it, I'm done. I'm going back to Christianity. It's like, really? Why? I don't think I ever got a response from her, not that I recall, but apparently she thought that the Christian doctrine was more true, more credible, more fraternal maybe, or maybe she'd get a better seat on the rapture bus if she was a Christian than a alphabetizer. I don't know. Everybody has their own personal reason. But you know, one of the things, I'll go back to you in a second here. One of the things I was going to talk about today was Isaiah 28, verses 23 to 29. There's a few things I was going to talk about if we have time. And a very interesting phrase in Isaiah 28:23. It says, Ha azinu ve shemau kuli ha kashivu ve shemau amerti. Okay, the word ayin zayin nun is the word for ear or balance or handles. And then it's the word shema with a vav prefix and suffix. So give ear and listen. Then the word koli, my voice, kufav lamed. Okay, then ha kushivu. Well, the kuf shin yod bet. Kuf shin is unintelligible, hard like straw, severe and difficult. So if we look up kuf shin bet or kuf shin yod bet to get it right out of the dictionary here, this, he says, give ear, but the word ear is also to balance, which is very similar to the word ayin for eye, which is to weigh carefully, measure exactly, give a perfect balance, like scales of balance. If, you know, and you've got that gauge right in the center, and if it's not exactly right there, you've got to change the weights with infinitesimally small micro measures in order to make it perfect. So kuf shin yod bet. Well, interesting here. That's not even in the dictionary. Kuf shin yod bet. You got kuf shin yod aleph means difficulty, contradictory. Kuf shin yod hey is difficulty or difficult question or problem or objection. So when I say the kuf shin is unintelligible, hard, severe, straw, well, it's unintelligible. That's kuf shin, but this is kuf shin yod bet. So now that means we have to look at kuf shin bet. Is there even a word spelled kuf shin bet? I'm trying to show you part of the problem with the analyzing this. Oh, here it is, kuf shin bet. There isn't a word in the dictionary with the yod, but it literally means to incline one's ears to listen. Incline ears to listen. Incline, to tip, to what? Yeah, like that. Gave attention, listen, hearken, obey. Well, that's a synonym with Shema. So here in this one verse, it's saying, give ear, hear, and incline to hear. Three different words, all meaning the same synonymous. Pay attention. Means attentive, listener. Attentiveness. And hear, that's the fourth word. Amarti, well, the tav yod suffix means I will or I have, and you'll get both translations in the scripture, as if to say the professional translators don't even know. So what this is saying, Isaiah 28:23, is Yahweh speaking, saying, listen, I will speak or I have spoken. So whoever this is written to better take it upon themselves to have their ears paying attention and listening to my voice. Oh, gee, was that strict enough? Never yet on the history of the planet has anybody done this that I'm aware of. Never yet. And if somebody wants to say, oh, yes, we're reiterating bad doctrine, like, really? Where do you get that idea? Certainly not from me. Must be in your own interpretation. Well, don't listen to your own interpretation then. Listen to Yahweh's words. How do you listen to Yahweh's words? You want to trust stones? You want to trust Strongs? You want to trust B2B? I saw a book that was telling you how bad were the men, the people that wrote virtually every dictionary, lexicon, and translation that exists. It was telling how they were all members of dark, occult, secret societies. It was a book I saw when I was up in Canada a few years back, and it sat there and shot down every concordance, every translation, every dictionary as being designed to lead astray and literally lead you to hell, to ruin you for trying to look up the words. And they were suggesting that anybody who tried to analyze the meaning of the words was doomed to deception and failure, because the only books that we have available over the last probably 400 years have all been occultic mystery, you might say mystery schools is a concept, but occultic mystery mechanisms. Imagine that. So for me to promote the use of Brown Driver Briggs or Young's Concordance or Strong's Concordance or Stone's Tanakh, any of them, King James, every one of them are corrupt. Every one of them, as this book was saying, and it was a very thick book, every one of them will drive you insane. And I've heard it said that the Catholics have said, do not try to read the scriptures on your own. It'll drive you insane. You can't do it. You need to have been called from on high and gifted with a special anointing. And even that, I don't think anybody looks at the Paleo-Hebrew, because if they had, then Caleb and Rob, as a trick question, hey, where do you get your shmiha? They didn't say those words, that was somebody else, but they said, where do you get your credibility? Where do you get your credentials? Where do you get the proof that what you're saying is right? And it's like, sorry, it was a secret mystery hidden for thousands of years. There is no place to validate it other than perhaps the plumb line in your own being. And if the plumb line in your own being, the ruach within you, tells you this stuff is replacement theology and bogus, well, I guess you'll have to trust that plumb line within you, that feeling. I've heard it said that the Mormons have a quickening, a feeling, an inner calibration. Okay. And I say that word not mockingly, but I have a certain word that I looked up this morning that we'll get to it. Het Yod Shin Mem, I think is the word. It was in Isaiah 60, and it was also in Isaiah 28. And it literally means sensorial, feeling. It's translated hasten. It said, there's this one verse, let the believer not expect it soon. Let the believer not expect it soon. But that word means soon, or to hasten, also means feeling or sensation. So you could read that verse as saying, it's not going to be a feeling. Well, then what is it? Is it intellectual? I've heard people say that the ultimate human carnality is to try to intellectualize stuff. To be intellectual is to be sinful, carnal, too human. Well, again, I disagree. So you can believe your own stuff. I believe that as a premise, and that's why I'm going on about this, as a premise, if I think that the original word that Yahuwah invented, designed, built, appropriated, according to John 1:1, is the Hebrew alphabet, then it's his design. And if that's the word which he so associates with, that he's good with, that he's down with that he could say in John 1:1 that it is Elohim and it's with, even though is and with are like an oxymoron, is that if it's with, it's not is, it's other than, but if it's is, he's building a conundrum. He built in a puzzle. And then he's so associated with this word, and then used this word to project and to manifest his reasoning, his intent, his desire, his vision for all of the physical cosmos. So Aleph manifests Bet, which includes human brain, human consciousness, human intellect, human thinking. then human thinking is trapped and bounded by, but also then choreographed by the same Hebrew alphabet. So for us to intellectualize, think, ponder, reason, apply logic, and even to have emotions about it, which are also projections or manifestations of the Hebrew alphabet letters, is perfectly acceptable, is perfectly human, is perfectly, you might call it kadosh, divine, sacred, of Yahweh's ilk, of Yahweh's like, because he said, I'm going to make man in our image, our likeness, but the word likeness is the word dalet mem, dummy, which means similarity, which is also the word for blood. Does that mean he has a head and a torso and 2 arms and 2 legs? That's not necessarily the likeness. So people claim to have seen Elohim sitting on a throne with a head and torso and arms and legs, but if he's a spirit without a body, they couldn't have seen that. Or if they saw that, it was some sort of weird manifest, which may or may not be accurate. But for Yeshua to say he came down to the earth walking as Son of Man, Ben Adam, the word Ben meaning son, Bet Nun also is the construct state. Bet Nun Hey is to construct, to build. So he came down in the image, the form of man. Did he ever claim to be Son of God? Claimed to be Ben Adam, Son of Man, many times. So what I'm saying is, what does it mean to be similar to Elohim? To have the similar thoughts, to have the similar mind. So then for us to apply intellect to these words is fitting the, as I described last week, the essence of humanity as a speaking spirit, for us to engage in the perplexity, the complexity, for us to engage in the wrestling of words and thoughts, ideas, is his game, his design. He does that too. And apparently he wants us to do that. But I've heard people, I heard this one guy say, to think is carnal. And of course, you don't want to be a carnal Christian. Oh boy, no way. One step from being a heathen. You want to be a spiritual Christian. So to walk in the spirit, that's good. But to think, really, well, if that's your paradigm, that to think is carnal, as I said, well, conversation's over then, because I'm going to just process words and ideas and respond to your saying that. And if you can go there, then you might as well leave. The conversation's over. You've just slammed the gate on any further analysis of this subject matter. But I can show you words in Hebrew, like the word Bet Yod Nun, and Ayin Resh Kaf, and Shin Ayin Resh, and numerous other ones, where it seems that Yahweh designed humans to do this business of thinking, pondering, and discussing, and using language as the tool. And he gave us these 22 letters, so it's all built into these 22 letters. So for us to discuss, what do these 22 letters mean? What do they have in them? And how do they relate to each other? Is the stuff of humanity. It's the biggest stuff, the greatest stuff. But if somebody doesn't want to engage in that business, say, go play in the cat box. You don't, it's okay. It's okay. Find some other game. Find something else to do. It just doesn't matter. I'm not going to say you're going to burn in hell if you don't do this. I'm not saying, oh, the Christians replaced the 12 tribes of Israel. I didn't say that. I've never said that. As a matter of fact, I've said that what the message in the alphabet is saying is that the 12 tribes of Israel are bound to be and due to, and I would believe imminently, to reassemble the 12 tribes. You look at Ezekiel 37, that looks like dead people coming back to life out of the dust of the earth, the valley of dry bones. Is that literal? I don't know. I can't say that. It sure seems fantastical, like some sort of fantasy, like some sort of, oh, come on, it must be a metaphor. I don't know, it must be anything. He'll do whatever he plans on doing. If he wants to drag people up from the dead, reassemble their bones, put sinews and muscles, and then have the wind blow and breathe breath back into their lungs, that's Elohim's business. And my brain trying to wrap around it is certainly not the determinator. Just read his words. Could he do it if he wanted to? Sure. He could dry up the sea. He could put springs in the desert. He could do anything he wants. Make water gush out of a rock. Sure, why not? He could do anything he wants. He could give himself a foot and walk the earth and die if he wants. Yeah, but does that mean I'm buying into the death scenario? What death scenario? As the Christians describe it. Well, I don't. People can come up with all different kinds of reasons. I'm not buying into that, other than the fact that apparently he wanted to do it and prove something and accomplish something. So if he goes in as the Vav man, subject to the weapon, Vav Zion, and comes out as sprouting resurrected Zadi unto Kuf Resh Shin, then the end Tav, well, analyze that. Analyze that. That's all I'm doing. I'm trying to analyze what's written. And again, I've never heard Christians even mention the Hebrew alphabet. They'll talk to you about Greek, and the Greek letters mean something, but they're not going to talk to you about that. As a matter of fact, what used to be the letter, I think it was pronounced Kof in Greek, it was lost, and so was the letter. This is the sixth letter, I think. The letter Vav was lost out of the Greek. Two letters were lost out of the ancient Greek alphabet, and so they're not even in the modern Greek. And I think it's the Vav and the Kuf. But anyway, the point is, if anybody wants to complain about what we're saying, that's good. It must mean you're listening. But don't necessarily think that what you think I said is what I said. You could talk to me about it. You could give me a call. But certainly think, wrap your mind around it, kick it around, argue it with your own head, with your own spouse, with your own friends. Hey, is this possible? Could it be this? Blah, blah, blah. Look at those letters, analyze those letters. And if you say, phooey, can't be in the letters, well, then that's your determination. But I'm insisting it is in the letters. And therefore, look at the letters and prove me wrong. Prove me wrong if you want. If you can, go ahead. Go ahead and try. Step up to the plate and take this on. Prove me wrong. What do the letters mean? And so for the lady that says, hey, Gimel means to rise up and be arrogant and haughty. You're right. Well, that's a sin. Oh, is it? Well, tell you what, maybe I could look at it, not maybe, I can, that Elohim, though he's sitting in his throne room in the heavens in his grandeur with no contenders, nobody arguing with him, Aleph. So he invents an adversary, Bet. That's right, the devil, Hasatan, with all his angels that he coerced a third of all the angels in heaven to join his forces and rebel against the Almighty. Really, is that a true story? Is that really laid out in the scripture? That's a surmise. It's not even specifically spoken, but people have interpreted that way. Okay, let's just go with that for the sake. So why did Elohim have that happen? Oops, he made angels that rebelled. They couldn't have rebelled unless he made them to rebel and gave them the, hey, why don't you rebel? He gave them a free will and allowed them to rebel. Interestingly enough, the letter Bet means against. And so some people think the letter Bet is the devil because it's the possibility of rejecting, rebelling, and moving away from the oneness of the Achad Aleph. Well, so Elohim invented that too. And if Gimel means proud, well, Elohim, you could say, only the rebels have proud haughtiness, but maybe Elohim said, I think that it would be more prestige and grandeur for me to humble myself as the Dalit and Gimel in my haughtiness as the poor one who'd get beaten up and killed. He was proud to do that. What a wonderful thought. So Gimel is proud and haughty, arrogant. In his arrogance, the Almighty Creator Spirit without a body gave himself a body so he could give himself a foot. So then he created the planet so he'd have a place to put his foot, like an ottoman, a footstool, a place to put your foot. He invented a place to put his foot, invented himself a foot, gave himself a foot to walk down on the face of the earth as a human so he could experience death and in dying accomplish something as a dead man. Something in Kaf Lamed Mem Nun Samak Ayin Pei he accomplished at the depth of Mem, so that it turned around a blessed noon restart and launched back out of the grave, manifesting as Zadi Kuf. Okay, I choose to believe that narrative. You can believe whatever you want. Anyway, back to you guys before I get into the stuff we're really going to talk about, if you want, or we could just talk about this and do the other thing next week. It's up to you.